The girl sat quietly in her wheelchair outside the large hotel entrance, her hands resting gently on her small cloth bag filled with handmade bracelets. The morning was bright, but her world always felt a little dimmer than everyone else's. Life had taught her to survive without expecting much from anyone. She had learned to rely on her own strength, even though her body didn't always cooperate. Still, she never let her spirit break. People often ignored her or offered quick, uncomfortable glances before looking away, but she had grown used to it. She didn't want pity. She only wanted a fair chance. She waited patiently for a woman who had contacted her online to buy a few bracelets. It wasn't much money, but every little bit helped. She watched elegant guests stepping out of expensive cars, walking past the hotel doors as if the world belonged to them. Their confidence, their lifestyle, their ease with everything. It felt like another universe compared to hers. Yet she never envied them. She only wished she could move through life as freely. Just then, a sleek black luxury car pulled up in front of the hotel. The staff reacted immediately, straightening their uniforms, rushing to greet the person stepping out. She didn't look up at first. Assuming it was another rich guest she had no reason to pay attention to. But the sounds around her grew quieter, as if the crowd itself had paused. Curious, she finally lifted her eyes. A tall, sharply dressed man stepped out of the car with a quiet authority that didn't need to be announced. His suit looked tailored, his posture perfect, and there was an air of power around him that made people naturally step aside. She didn't know who he was, but he clearly belonged to a world carved far above hers. She instinctively lowered her gaze again, hoping to stay invisible. She had no desire to embarrass herself by drawing attention, but fate seemed to love noticing her at the worst possible times. As the man passed by, her small bag slipped from her lap without warning, hitting the ground softly. The bracelets scattered everywhere, rolling across the pavement in all directions. Her heart dropped. She leaned forward, trying to reach them, but her hands trembled, and she couldn't get far enough. People nearby avoided looking, pretending they hadn't seen. The billionaire gathered every bracelet with careful hands, as if each one were something delicate and valuable. She stared in shock, unable to understand why a man of his status would kneel on the pavement for her. People around them watched silently, some surprised, others confused, but he didn't seem to care. He simply collected the scattered beads and placed them gently back into her cloth bag. When he finally looked up, his eyes were warm, steady, and strangely genuine. "These are beautiful," he said softly. His voice was calm, without even a hint of superiority. She froze, unsure how to respond. Compliments were rare in her life, and coming from someone like him felt unreal. She managed to stammer that she made them herself, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. He nodded with admiration, not pity, and that small difference made her chest tighten with unfamiliar emotion. He stood up slowly and offered her the bag. She took it with both hands, murmuring a quiet thank you, but she couldn't meet his eyes for long. She was embarrassed, not because of her wheelchair, but because she felt out of place in front of someone who seemed to have everything: wealth, respect, confidence. She was afraid he might suddenly change his tone or offer pity she never wanted. But instead of walking away, he knelt again, adjusting the wheel of her chair so it wouldn't roll backward. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked, genuinely curious. She nodded and explained she was here to deliver a few bracelets to a customer. The billionaire listened attentively, his expression thoughtful, as if what she said truly mattered. One of the hotel staff hurried over, clearly worried that someone of his status was spending too much time outside, but he raised a hand lightly, signaling that he didn't need assistance. The staff stepped back immediately, and the girl realized something she had never expected. This man was used to being obeyed, respected, and admired. And yet, he had taken time to help her without hesitation. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen not as someone weak or struggling, but as a person. A person with talent, dignity, and worth. The billionaire's gaze held none of the judgment she feared. Instead, she felt an odd sense of comfort, as if he understood her in a way strangers rarely did. And that unexpected moment stayed with her long after he finally stood up again. Later that afternoon, she finally met the woman who had ordered her bracelets. The exchange was brief, polite, and she received the small amount of money she had expected. It wasn't much, but to her, it meant another day she could manage her expenses without asking anyone for help. She tucked the money safely into her pocket and began slowly wheeling herself toward the hotel exit, hoping to return home before the streets became too crowded. But just as she reached the lobby doors, she saw him again, the billionaire. He was speaking to a hotel manager, but when his eyes landed on her, he excused himself from the conversation and walked toward her with the same calm confidence he had shown earlier. Her heart skipped slightly. She didn't know why a man like him would bother with her twice in one day. He stopped beside her wheelchair and greeted her with a gentle smile. "Did everything go well?" he asked, as if he had been waiting to know. She nodded shyly and thanked him again for helping her earlier. He dismissed the thanks with a small wave of his hand, then crouched slightly so he could be at eye level with her. It felt strange having someone like him lower himself just to talk to her, but it also made her feel respected. He asked about her handmade bracelets, about how she learned to make them, and how long she had been selling them. She answered hesitantly at first, but his interest didn't fade. His expression stayed warm, almost impressed, and slowly she found herself opening up more than she had planned. She told him she made everything at home with limited tools, that she often worked late into the night, and that her real dream was to start a small online shop someday. But she didn't have the equipment or money to do it properly. She immediately regretted saying so much. She didn't want him to think she was trying to gain sympathy. She looked down, embarrassed, and said she was sorry for talking too much. But he shook his head with a gentle firmness. "You're not talking too much," he said. "You're sharing your story, and it's an incredible one." His words caught her off guard. No one had called her story incredible before. Most people didn't even let her finish a sentence. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten, and for a moment she forgot about the noisy lobby around them. It was just the two of them, her, fragile but hopeful, and him, powerful yet unexpectedly gentle. For the first time, she wondered if fate was trying to bring something new into her life, something she never thought she deserved. The next morning, she was surprised to receive a call from the hotel reception asking her to return. Her first thought was that maybe she had dropped something or made a mistake the previous day. Worry pressed on her chest as she slowly made her way back to the grand lobby, unsure of what awaited her. When she entered, she saw the billionaire standing near the same seating area where they had talked. He turned immediately when he heard her wheelchair approaching and greeted her with a warm smile that eased some of her anxiety. He gestured for her to join him at a small table where a neatly wrapped box sat. She stared at it, confused and hesitant. He gently pushed it closer to her and said, "This is for you." Her hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped the box, and when she lifted the lid, her breath caught. Inside was a brand new laptop, professional crafting tools, beads, wires, packaging materials, and a small printer for labels, everything she had ever dreamed of but never thought she would own. Her eyes widened, filling with tears before she could stop them. She looked up at him in disbelief. Why would you do this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. She worried that accepting it might make her seem weak or dependent, something she never wanted to be seen as. But the billionaire shook his head softly, lowering himself into the chair beside her so he could meet her gaze. "Because you have talent, determination, and a kind heart," he said. "You work harder than most people I've met, and you never complain. People like you deserve a real chance to grow. Sometimes life doesn't give that chance, so someone has to." His sincerity overwhelmed her. No one had ever believed in her dreams this way. No one had ever looked at her with admiration instead of pity. She covered her mouth with her hand as tears streamed down her cheeks, unable to hold her emotions anymore. For the first time in many years, her hope felt real, not distant or impossible. He placed a gentle hand on the table, close enough to offer support, but respectful not to cross boundaries. "This is not charity," he added softly. "It's an investment in someone I truly believe in." She nodded slowly, still crying but smiling through her tears. This moment felt like the start of a new chapter, one she never expected, one she thought she would never deserve. As she left the hotel with the box on her lap, the world around her looked different, brighter, softer, and for the first time she felt her future was opening not out of luck, but because someone finally saw her worth.